starting today a new concept
Yes.
of panel discussion. And today's topic for the panel discussion is foundry raw material, localization, opportunities, and the challenges. For today's webinar and panel discussion, we have a team of experts in their own subject. We have Amish Panchal, we have Anand Bam sir, we have Nitin Landge sir, we have Jaydeep Bapna sir, then we have Manish Patrikar and Amar Patil. And we have one more person is as a coordinator is Nagesh Duma. So this is our team for today's panel discussion. Actually, when we decided this topic, the thought come around is what is actually mean by localization. What we're going to discuss on particular localization. So when we talk about the localization, what we come across is the vision given by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi ji. That is about the basically Make in India, then global to local, and Atmanirbhar Bharat are the vision which they have seen. And to start with that vision, what we need is to start Make in India. That is for our own supplier to grow and grab the market in the local way. And when it comes, there is an opportunity for our local suppliers, local manufacturers to grow and expand their business. But at the same time, there will be many challenges. So today's discussion is basically on that. What are the opportunities and what are the challenges? And our panel members are going to discuss the same. So I'm not taking much of the time now. I will shift the system to Mr. Nagesh Duma, who is the coordinator for today's session. So hand over to Nagesh. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. Thanks and good evening, everyone. As Sandeep rightly explained, this is our first type of a panel discussions, and we have taken the subject of foundry raw material. What are the opportunities and challenges? How we will proceed in the program today is the opening already had. We will give a short introduction of panel, and we will discuss very quickly foundry industries with unique challenges, what is meant by raw material localization, and then every panel member will express his views on the topic, and then we will have open question and answer. Okay, so our esteemed panel today, as most of you know, most of them, I will introduce Mr. Amish Panchal, who is from Castwell Foundries, Mr. Anand Bam, who is an independent foundry consultant and well-known name in industry, Mr. Amar Patil, he is from Mahindra and Mahindra, he is plant head over there, Mr. Manish, he is from MPM Nagpur, Mr. Nitin Landge, he is a managing director and owner of Gokul Ferrocast, and Mr. Jaydeep Bapna, also owner and managing director from Mutha Group Satara. So most of the time what we have seen is this panel is a quite good balance of raw material manufacturers, suppliers, and raw material users. So you will be getting beneficial from both point of views on the subject topic. Yeah, we know foundry, it's an industry with a unique challenge. And to be honest, foundries has a huge potential to make losses, but very less probability to make profit other than above the margins. What are the challenges? Typically, we know in Indian scenario, we have challenges like manpower, technology, finance. Raw material is also a key challenge for us, supply chain efficiencies and industry consolidations. But today we will be covering the topic of raw material. So when we discuss raw material, what are some of the challenges? Basically, the raw material, apart from the scrap and pig iron, other than alloys, additives plays a very critical and vital role in overall product costing. Most of the time, alloys and resins are technically not known to the foundries. The foundries know either them by brand name or by manufacturer, but to be honest, the know-how regarding the technicalities of these is very less at the foundries. I'm not saying not, I'm saying it's very limited. Most of the foundries, they are not capable to check what they are getting as a raw material. They can check scrap, they can check pig iron, they can check few of the alloys, but not every raw material which is having impact on their cost level product quality. They are not in position to check them. Variation in the batches of the raw material, this destroys or this put additional pressure on the people who are controlling the processes. A price variation, to be honest, is also a challenge. So as I have said, today is our panel who are including raw material manufacturers, suppliers, end users, and consultants. Recent trend we have seen is towards the localization. rather than just doing it for the sake of patriotism, we would like to really discuss this topic, whether it makes sense, whether it do not make sense, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, what are the typical risk which can come if the trade pressure between India and China increases. So all these topics we will discuss. And then I would like to start now the open discussion. I would request Mr. Amish Panchal to start his discussion regarding the participants. I would like to request you that after the discussion of the panel, you are allowed to ask the question and answer. It will be open question and answer. I would request you to just mention the name to whom you would like to address that question. Like if I would like to address a question specifically to Bam sir, I will first say that Bam sir, this is the question for you. May I know this, like that? That is my request. So over to you, Amishji.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, good evening,
Amish.
friends.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening. Yeah. Welcome all the panel members and fellow participants. It is great and novel idea to have such kind of panel discussion online. I think this is unique for the foundry industry itself. None of the foundry industry association or anyone has done this kind of panel discussion. It is a good experience. Let us start. Nagesh, shall I run with my presentation?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
That's why I stopped my screen. So
Okay, just a minute. I will. New technology, some new challenges also.
Yes. Now we can see your screen.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. First slide is not coming, but let us forget that. So this is my second slide. What is export is concerned? So this is a trade balance of India with its top trading partners. There is nothing to explain other than US and China. Both are in agreement. So this slide is self-explainable. Of course, we see the huge difference between China's trade and India's trade. Now, what are the top 5 export markets of India? So these are the charts, and this side it is on the import market. So if we see, US is the largest, and import-wise, if we see, China is the largest. And these are the few of the products which is mentioned, like petroleum, jewelry, diamond, medicine. This India exports, and what we import: petroleum, coal, gold, diamond, and LNG. These are the major products which we import. Now, what is our today's aim, or what is the main aim of this panel discussion? There are two thoughts going on. Like Sandeep ji said, our Honorable Prime Minister given a slogan that Atmanirbhar Bharat. So most of us, or many, are confused that is it Swadeshi and Atmanirbhar? What is the difference between these two? So Swadeshi, as per my understanding, it is no or less imports, no MNCs, everything. We have to be a self-contained country. And Atmanirbhar means minimum import, MNCs are allowed, everyone is allowed, but we are self-sufficient. This is the basic difference. So we have to decide what is our aim or what we are achieving out of this. Now, if we see the history, India has seen the attacks of Turks, Afghan, Mughals, French, and ultimately British. They were the last one. As a race or as a country, we are too much accommodative and adaptive. We have accepted all of them without much of the resistance. And we always see what is our benefit. And second quality of our Indian, which I could say, is we are a loner. We are non-community or non-cooperative kind of working people. We lack in a long-term vision. And lastly, it should not be spoken, but we have minuscule national pride. That's why these attackers or invaders got stable or stayed in India. So with these challenges, how we can be Atmanirbhar or maybe Swadeshi, or how we can localize or reduce our imports. That is the challenge with India. So can we be 100% self-sufficient? So what is the situation now? I have divided in three categories: iron foundries, steel foundries, and copper and aluminum foundries, which are the main elements, metallics, and some of the non-metallics also important. So all these lists, from scrap to sand, everything is being imported. Here, this table shows whether this material is available locally or not. We are not discussing about the quality of the local product or quality of the imported product, or what are the advantage and disadvantage. For per se, whether this material is available in India or not. So if we see the scrap is available, and the last column shows what is the imported component in this product. If it is available in India, like if I say my product, ferrosilicon magnesium, if I choose this, imported component, though I manufacture it in India, imported component is 20 to 35%. Rest of the raw material comes, I'm sourcing from India, but imported component is 20. These are the various, as per my assumption or knowledge, I have kept this percentage. So we have to see what level we want to go. Similarly, if we go for steel foundries, scrap to zircon sand, scrap to sand, what are the local percentage and what is locally available? Other than some of the ferroalloys like zirconium, tungsten, niobium, nickel, it is not available locally. Rest of the things are available. Of course, and sands, zircon and chromite sand is not available locally as far as my knowledge is there. Similarly, for aluminum and copper foundries, if we see, so scrap, ingots, alloying elements, most of the alloying elements of the non-ferrous foundries, other than copper, nothing is available or produced in India. Everything we have to import. Fluxes, filters, and tooling, yes, it is available, but I'm not sure about the imported component of that. Now, if we see the total important or ferrous metallics materials balance, if we can say, how much is being produced, how much we are exporting, and how much is being imported. So first and foremost is iron ore. Import is 0. Export, yes, we are doing 1,61,000. Pig iron, I'm unable to get the correct data, so I've put a question mark where the correct data is not available. So this table shows that what is our status today. Most of the foundry men are concerned with the ferrosilicon. What is a silicon? So India produces about 1,20,000 tons of ferrosilicon, and equally imports 1,92,000 tons of ferrosilicon. So these are of course I don't want to go line by line because this presentation will be available on the net, so you will be able to see the things. So these shows the status. Now if we see the scrap, if we want to do indigenization, or tomorrow we say that we want to stop everything, but HMS, which is common for steel foundry as well as some cast iron foundries, 3 lakh tons we are importing. These are the sum of the bifurcation, what kind of scrap we are importing. Similarly, from whom and what we are importing and exporting. So particularly for ferroalloys, this chart shows for ferroalloys. Pardon me for the small figures, but China we are exporting a highest quantity of ferroalloys, though it is different from the common perception. And import wise, we are importing a lot from Bhutan, and that is majorly ferrosilicon we are importing. And China, we import the 5th. China comes the 5th in as far as import of ferroalloys is concerned. Now, let us see why we import. What is the basic logic? So it is a management principle, QCD, everyone knows. Quality may variety of compositions, like some compositions, 75 grade ferrosilicon, if I say my product, it is not available in India. Some of the compositions like a higher barium, particularly required for inoculants, or higher grade of ferrosilicon zirconium, which is not available in India. So that is the major thing. Better performance, better appearance, that of course goes with the machinery, availability of the material. Then cost wise, if we see, it's a wide difference between cost. Then perceived benefit, we say that okay, imported material, it is good. Then delivery point, It is prompt response from all the exporters. The number of suppliers are more. You have a wide choice. Then bulk supply, of course, whatever quantity you require, and assured supply. These are the few points. Now, again, we have to ask ourselves, what is our aim? Only China or globe? What is right now, due to COVID and tension at the border, we are looking only at China. But as an Indian or as a nation, what we want to do? We want to fight only against China, or it is against the world? Nagesh, please stop me if my time is over.
No. You are well in time.
Yeah. So if we see the balance, of course, China weighs much more, and that is true for not only for India, but all the countries in the world. Certain products, China is the only source, and huge cost difference. That is the biggest advantage of importing from China. I'll skip this slide. Only thing I'll try to draw attention, what China exports to India, metals, 4.72 billions. And if what India exports to China, metals 2.6, and if we see mineral, which is iron ore, that is 3. So altogether 5.6 billion we export to China, and we import 4.72 billion. So that way, if we see per se, we are trade positive with China, particularly in metals and ores are concerned. Now, what are the challenges faced in localization? Here I have put my thoughts in 2 slides. First is in this slide contains by foundries. What are the challenges faced by foundries, and what by raw material or equipment manufacturer? Foundries, if they want to buy locally, their main concern is high cost of product, non-timely delivery, consistency problem. Unfortunately, they say that Indian suppliers or local suppliers are profiteering or opportunistic. They have opportunistic approach, and many times we have seen that also. Lack of new technology. We are very poor in introducing new technology. Minimum or no technical supports. Lack of systems. And added advantage of locally sourcing is a less inventory cost for the foundries. These are from the foundries viewpoint of view. Now, from the viewpoint of raw material and equipment manufacturer, what are the why they are facing a problem in localization? Non-availability of some raw materials. Second is non-willingness or no time to execute or evaluate the cost benefit vis-a-vis local as well as imported products. Non-timely payments by the customers. Minimum support during the trials, because customers do not have time to go through this pain. Scale of operations, of course, compared to the larger players of the world, most of the Indian producers are having a challenge in that. No loyalty from the customers. Customers change the suppliers. We are not talking about the large organized sector. I'm saying from the view of whole industry, if we say. And last threat is from traders. If manufacturers wants to localize and supply from here, but traders have no limitation. They can import from anywhere and put a challenge. Now, what are the challenges? Indian manufacturer, local manufacturer walks on a tightrope. On the one side, it is a large player from other countries and MNCs, and other side, it is from China. So what are the threats or challenges local manufacturer is facing? From MNCs or large player of the globe, brand name, of course, better products, scale of operation, larger scale of operation, better technical supports, deep pockets, advance and timely payments. Of course, we have to import, so we have to pay in advance. Or if foreign supplier is there, we tend to pay on time. And last but not least, still we have some white skin advantage or perception in our mind. What about the Chinese competition? Cost of the product is the main thing. Quality becomes secondary when the cost difference is so huge. Market entry policy, they have a specific market entry policy or company specific policy. Scale of operation is large. Pricing policy is totally different or ununderstood, how they price their products. And government support, still question mark. Currently it is not true, but at some point of time, it is there or not there. Now, what are the solutions? Nothing is possible overnight. We should have 5, 10, and 20 years strategic planning as a nation and industry. How much we want to localize, what we want to localize. Second point is we don't need to invent the wheel. Learn and copy from them. Them means anyone. We have to duplicate their models. Reverse engineering of products and practices. This is important. Not only products, but their practices also we have to reverse engineer. Of course, here we feel that we don't want to end up in copycat, or we don't want to call as a copycat. But that is how all the leading exporters of the world, be it Korea, China, Taiwan, they have learned, and we have to do that. Buy technology and not products. We have to identify the technology which we can absorb and which is within our reach, and we have to indigenize that thing. Take a baby step. Start with the low hanging fruits, like people say that stop application from XYZ country, or stop buying their products or something like that. And last one is world over, this being now increasingly it is being followed. C+1 policy means China plus one more supplier. So identify few items and second source for items. Start with 5 to 10% of your requirement. You cannot overnight replace whole your requirement. You have to see the cost, delivery, and other challenges also. So to take a first step, start with 5 to 10% of your requirement as a replacement as 5. But to me, this is the most interesting. We should not blindly oppose the imports from any country, but we have to challenge ourselves how much value addition after that imports we are doing. Like if we see the case of the diamonds, India imports a lot of rough diamonds and we polish it and exports. So that is a job work. We don't want to end up doing that kind of thing. Instead, if we turn into a jewelry, the value addition is much more higher. So if we, in our field also, we have to look at that angle also. Now, last two slides, government policy. Everyone looks for government, but currently I was attending one EPC seminar, and the gentleman clearly list out that what is the government's priority sector. First is healthcare equipment. Second is pharmaceutical, where active pharma ingredient, 90% we are importing, our pharma industry is importing. Similarly, electronic goods comes third. Mobile, 80% of the Indian mobiles are coming from abroad. We are not manufacturing. Sports and toys, 80%, and fifth comes automobile, where our industry may fall. So this is the government's priority to localization. And this is the last slide. What is traditional want? I don't want to repeat that because everyone knows. Till now, we are asking government support in all these 7 items or maybe more. But what should be our wish list from the government? We should ask for the technology transfer support. How government can help us in transferring the technology from any country. Faster depreciation. That is what as a businessman or manufacturer I'm looking at. Iron ore export restrictions. Why? If we have a surplus steel or pig iron in India, manufactured in India, our scrap is our major raw material for our industry, and its prices are linked with steel and pig iron to some extent. So if we do that, our total raw material cost may come down. Fourth point is R&D and reverse engineering by central research institutes. And fifth is best practice manuals. Like if I want to make a core shooter in India, which is world-class quality, what are the top manufacturer of core shooter in the world? What are the practices or quality standards they follow? At individual level, my reach is very small, but at government level, they can employ the resources and have this kind of modules available for the various industries, not only for foundry or metal industry. And this is the last. Let us have clear vision and aim where we want to reach. Thank you. Thank you, Nagesh, for allowing me to speak so much.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Amishji, for your all views. Now I would request Anand sir to share his views on the topic.
Okay. Thank you, Nagesh. Thanks, Amish. You have given me quite a lot of leads to start with.
Okay.
I don't have any presentation as such. I'll be speaking out of my heart. And as far as non-ferrous or aluminum industry is concerned, we are importing about 30 to 40% of our recycled aluminum in scrap form. Which in case of ferrous alloys, Amish slide said that it's 5 to 15%, but in case of aluminum, When we talk of recycled aluminum, it is 30% around we are importing. And that is due to price linkage with LME. And global prices are floating. They are changing every day, and aluminum market especially is very volatile. And in recent, I can say last 20 years, it has seen a lower end of about 88 rupees a kg and a upper end of 180 rupees a kg. And that is with what you can say MCX. At MCX, it has seen 100 rupee or maybe more than double jump. And that is more of a speculation. It is what you can say demand supply management. And that is unfortunately controlled by few big shots in the market. If you see virgin aluminium, Vedanta Group, Hindalco, Nalco, all of them, India is rich in bauxite, which is aluminium ore, but we lack in the power cost. Refining aluminium or getting aluminium from iron ore is a power intensive or energy intensive process. And unfortunately in India, where the bauxite is located, the energy is not located. Where the energy is surplus, bauxite is not there. Transportation logistic is a big problem. So if one can avail the bauxite resources along with cheaper power, then nobody can beat India in aluminium manufacturing. We have got much better or world-class refineries at Nalco, Hindalco, which can produce aluminium to its purest form, that is less than 0.11% Fe. And even Dubal and Alba are struggling to achieve that. So this is where government has to intervene to make us self-sufficient, आत्मनिर्भर. अगर हमें एल्यूमिनियम के बारे में आत्मनिर्भर बनना है, तो जहां बॉक्साइट है, वहां पे एनर्जी की सुविधा उपलब्ध करनी होगी. Secondly, when it comes to recycling, aluminum can be recycled 100 times, 10,000 times. There is no end to recycling of it. When it comes to quality out of recycled material, then also the metal treatment of aluminum is so advanced that as long as you are able to control chemistry of the bath, you are able to control impurities in the bath, you can produce aerospace grade castings from 100% recycled material. There is no ban on it. There is no restriction on it. That's the beauty of aluminum, and thereby about, I would say, in castings, in foundries, 70 to 80% of raw material is recycled ingots. Hardly anybody, apart from the alloy wheel manufacturers, nobody else uses the virgin aluminum ingot. Everywhere it is recycled aluminum ingot, and that is where the influence of imports disturbs the market. I would comment on it in a different manner. As I said earlier, it's a demand supply position warfare. Actually, stock position in the market is what it is killing the foundry industry. People are holding huge stocks of cheap imports. And if you compare the prices of imports, you get UBC scrap, that is used beverage can. Bare UBC scrap is available at maybe 60 cents a kg or so. And landed in India, it comes to about 70 to 75 cents. And if you have proper conversion facility, you can convert it to any alloy of your choice, for which is a castable alloy. Now talking about minor elements. The most common alloying element is magnesium and silicon. Unfortunately, silicon we can make, but again it becomes a power intensive story like ferrosilicon. If we see into the silicon manufacturing segment, every silicon smelter has got a prime business of electronic grade purified silicon, wherein a microchip weighing few milligrams is sold at hundreds of rupees. That is his core business. And whatever is the scrap produced in his factory, it is the metallic silicon or silicon metal which we consume in aluminum or any other casting foundry. So that is where India needs to pay its attention, and this is where big business houses and government has to intervene. Unfortunately, after Usha microprocessors debacle way back in 80s, there was no venture in India to produce a microprocessor of its own. And after that, India has never dared to purify silicon to electronic or semiconductor grade. If you are able to do it, then whatever is left out with you, let it be 98%, 99%, 99.5%, it is of no value. You can sell it at zero price. You can ask the buyer, मेरे गोडाउन में से माल उठाओ, मुझे नया माल बनाना है, जगह खाली करवाओ. The beauty of that silicon business. Magnesium, yes, we will be dependent on other countries, but addition of magnesium is hardly 0.25% to the mother metal. And for that matter, we have to be dependent. And this is where I wish to comment on, or I wish to stress upon the point which was raised by Amish, that is value addition. How much value do we add to it? If we take example of Japan, then there is a story of owner of Citizen Watches or director of Citizen Watches, who was having a dialogue with Goanese iron ore exporter. The iron ore exporter said to him that we export shiploads of iron ore to your country. The director of Citizen Watches just wrinkled his wrist in front of him. And you know something, this watch is made of steel, which is made from the iron ore coming from your country. You sell iron ore to us at 50 paisa a kg. And I sell this steel watch to you at 5 lakh rupees a kg. That is the difference. That is the kind of fashion Japanese people do it. If Indians start making value addition to it, the moment Indian foundries break the barrier of per kg basis, मेरा casting 60 रुपए किलो, मेरा casting 70 रुपए किलो, इस bracket से जब आप बाहर आओगे, and I sell, I manufacture valves, I manufacture pumps, I manufacture these particular things, items, commodities, and this commodity I am going to sell at this price, then no one is going to ask you how much do you import and how much do you export. You will be always in surplus. The basic purpose of Atmanirbhar Bharat is to attain trade surplus with any foreign country. Let it be China, let it be US, let it be Germany. Is it fit with any foreign country trade? Is where we have to become Atmanirbhar. So that becomes only due to value addition. I share a small example in my consultation career in aluminium. India was importing few castings for its, what you can say, Government of India enterprise consumption. Where the FD fan blades for massive boilers. The import price of those blades, those were cast blades, cast aluminium blades. The import price was about 1 lakh of rupees, 100,000 rupees per kg. Delivered those same component with better quality, better performance, off the shelf in less than 10,000 rupees a kg. The public sector enterprise was looking for that component, indigenization of that component for about 4 years. And in the 4 years, they could gather hardly 127 pieces. My client delivered them 4,000 pieces in single year, thereby wiping out all their shortfall. So this is how one can enter into value addition and import substitution. EEPC helps you in import substitution in identifying such components wherein India is importing something and there is potential of make in India. So instead of pondering on whether we should make silicon or whether we should try to import magnesium ore and purify it into magnesium metal, my request will be to keep on minimizing your imports as well as maximizing your exports. See to it on a micro level that your exports are certain more than your direct or indirect imports. And that is how one can attain the Atmanirbharta. And yes, as I said earlier, energy is a bigger challenge than raw material. We have got plenty of raw materials. We have got plenty of expertise, but unfortunately energy and which is governed by government itself, that is playing a major role in aluminum sector. For now, that is all from my side, Nagesh.
Yeah, thank you, Anandji. Thank you for all your views and guiding us on the non-ferrous sector specifically, to be honest. Now I request Amarji to share his views on the subject. Hello.
Yeah, Nageshji.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
a very good.
it's over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, a very good evening to all fellow foundermen, and giving us an opportunity to express our thought on this topic. I was earlier thinking whether this topic is really that important, but when I was started preparing it and going deeper and deeper, I came to know that this is one of the most important topic which every foundryman should know from customer perspective as well as from supplier perspective. So Nageshji, I would like to share my screen. Can I do so?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
you are allowed to share your screen.
Yeah, can you see this presentation?
Yeah, perfectly. We can see it.
Okay. Okay.
You can make it in presentation mode. That
Yeah. So IBC has already covered this. So basically this trade deficit, we have a huge trade deficit, and that import and export statistics, we have gone through it. So I will skip that. And from a foundry perspective, I have put one example of a common casting of, say, automotive grade casting of diesel engine cylinder block. Say a hypothetical example of 80 rupees per kg is a manufacturing cost. So out of this cost, you can see the breakup of this cost allocation. The raw material constitutes of 60% and fixed cost 20 and variable cost, which is 20%. So you can understand that how much it impacts on cost per se, the cost of the casting. So now we further drill down this raw material part of 60%. That 60% also, if you further drill down, you will find that metal cost itself is 84%, which comprises of major part like steel and pig iron and all, where we have a very little control on this quality. It is mostly a cost driven. I'm talking from this foundry perspective, and then further, by descending order, the cost comes, raw material cost comes is 11% from core area, where that we use sand, resin, coatings, etc., and then molding and fettling area. So this is what is our cost consideration. So we must understand the importance of the raw material. One example I have put over here, that rejection impact on the cost. Say one foundry who is producing 10,000 metric ton of the good casting, sellable casting, and if 1% rejection of that foundry, which is 100 metric ton, and if you consider that casting cost is 80 rupees per kg, then 1% rejection impact itself is 46 lakhs per year. It's a huge impact. So now we understand that how much this raw material plays an important role. So these are the 3A, 3B is nothing but that recoverable cost and non-recoverable cost. Recoverable cost is nothing but that scrap we are again putting into the furnace and getting it melted and going for that next casting. But this total impact of a size of 10,000 metric ton foundry per year is a 1% rejection increases the 46 lakhs. So from this perspective, we have also learned about these Be Indian, Buy Indian, Vocal for Local campaign, Atmanirbhar. Amish ji has also explained this very precisely and very clarity has brought into this. This simple principle, if we follow, we help the country to rebuild its economy and become self-reliant. So now its onus is on us, being as a foundry manufacturer or foundry supplier, how we can realize this Atmanirbharta or this Vocal for Local campaign. And if we follow this simple principle, we'll help the country in large extent to become self-reliant. Now, being a consumer perspective, what we all being expected to ensure that global quality with cost competitive price to retain and to survive in the global market. So my thrust is the only 2 points. One is that we should be cost competitive, because that definitely that competition is coming from the China, that trade war will be there, which Mr. Sandeep ji has also mentioned at the beginning. And if we want to compete with the China, then we have to be cost competitive. And if we want to, as a manufacturer, cost competitive, then raw material being as a 70%, it plays a role. Then definitely the help and the support is needed from the raw material supplier. So these are the significance of foundry raw material from consumer perspective. One, this I have divided into few of the pointers. So one is the strategic intent. This is like, I would put it into this way, that long-term business association, that we should work collaboratively, that manufacturer supplier as a partner. It is not so that supplier has got an entry, so he push his product with low cost and later on that product is not successful. Then we lose the trust, we lose the loyalty, and those issues will come. I can give you one example. One discussion was going on. One of the supplier had a discussion. He wanted to push his one raw material, and he was emphasizing on cost and quality and all. One of the global supplier, I would say, I will not name. And after discussion, he left few of the paper on my desk. I was not aware. So while I was arranging the desk while going home, so I saw that paper. There was a clearly written that this is the introductory price X, and after 6 months we can go for price rise, and we can make up the losses. And after next 6 months, because this company is they have a strategy of a single source and all, so we can take the advantage and recover our loss. So कहने का मतलब ये है कि this kind of a thing, that loyalty is very, very important to have a long run business in this area. Then second part is that responsiveness towards the customer pain areas. Customer may come across with many pain areas like some kind of quality issues. Immediate response is needed from that raw material supplier. So that responsiveness, that agility, and that responsiveness is very, very essential. Then price strategy against international price volatility. Recently we have seen last year, the 1.5 years back, that because of these pollution issues in China, most of the raw material small scale industries were closed down because of that smog and all those issues. And during those days, there was an acute shortage of the raw material like binders and those alloying agents and those things, and where that the entire pressure was transferred from that supplier to the customer. I'm not saying that supplier should work with these losses and all. Definitely we can have a win-win situation where supplier can reduce his profit margin. He can work on his operational efficiency measures, like what as a customer they are doing. As a tier one or manufacturer like automobile, we do not have a liberty to increase our prices of our vehicle, otherwise our share will go down miserably. Then fourth part is that supply chain vulnerability. Those things are very well to be considered by the raw material suppliers, because the supply chain itself is that they should use best of the practices in their supply chain, like JIT, like FIFO, that obsolescence should not be there. They should ensure on time in full, minimum batch quantity, where the cost of raw material can come down for the manufacturer. So then they can definitely go for that digitization. There we can see that variability reduction, dependency on the manual aspect. So this digitization is going to play a major role to supplier end also. Coming to that quality, few of the pointers I have identified are like these are the high quality products, zero rejection, rework, wastages. That is by default has to be there, and we are ensuring it. I can just give you an example, because earlier, since I am in Mahindra Foundry since last 27 years, I have witnessed 2 decades back, most of our critical raw materials, if I take an example of top 10 raw material, so out of that top 10 raw material, 70% of the raw material were supplied, we were getting from imported raw material, because we were not having the assurance or not having that kind of a confidence with that local raw material suppliers, specifically in the areas of resin, coatings, alloying agents, and those areas. And dependency of those global suppliers, imported raw materials was very, very high. But if you see today, now this our local raw material supplier also has done remarkable improvement, remarkable change has brought into this, and we can see, we can witness those kind of things during whenever we do visit to our IFEX, or whenever we do visit to GIFA, we come to know that those our local raw material supplier are dominating, or they have their dominant presence vis-a-vis these global raw material suppliers. It's a very good sign, and we are saying that reliability and consistency also. Why it is reliability and consistency is like reliability at the launch of the raw material. It's a kind of a thing, is a once you are entering or you are showing the result as a trial batch or as a sample batch. But consistency is that the dependency of the manufacturer on the raw material supply is very, very large. So consistency means that manufacturer expect the durability of the raw material. It is like a fill it and forget it. Once he has introduced that raw material supplier, that raw material should not give any trouble in terms of quality issues. So all those aspects has to be taken care by the raw material supplier, right from choosing his primary raw material from sources, his traceability, consistency, durability. He can ensure, and he can ensure that his customer has been protected. Another issues we do foresee that raw material testing facility. Many example we see that there are many limitations in front of the manufacturer. Suppose we come up with some huge rejection, suddenly spurt in the rejection, and we are unable to prove that it is because of the raw material. Though we know that the only change event is the raw material, but we are unable to prove that, because that lab report shows that everything is okay. Now, the expectation from manufacturer is that whatever lab testings are there, raw material suppliers can come forward. They should be more open. They should be, they should upgrade. They should educate that manufacturer to add few furthermore parameters of the testing, and the testing has to be more objective rather than subjective, because it is very difficult to prove that raw material is rejected from manufacturer perspective. So these kind of things definitely supplier can take it forward and bring, or they can earn the loyalty in long run. Then next part is that continual improvement efforts to upgrade existing product. They should have that R&D facility. It is not something copied and tried and tested product from some other supplier, because it will not give the results from long run. So they should have that kind of a facility at their end. They can even charge the premium. Customer is ready to pay that premium, provided they are getting that reliable and consistent raw material quality throughout their journey of production. Now, cost of the products. Cost competitive is definitely raw material has to be cost competitive, because most of the constitute of the cost of his casting is from raw material. Then second is no additional cost incurred. What does it mean is that no additional cost incurred means raw material supplier, to ensure that cost, price strategy and all, somewhere some elements or some kind of filler elements or something has been reduced, or it has been some inferior quality of the his primary raw material has been put into this, and in turn we land up into that some other issues, like we need to add more percentage of resin to get that strength and those parameters, or some filler agent we need to add, like for example that issues of quality, like suppose we are facing a veining issue, that anti-veining agent you add. So though on paper, on one sheet and isolation and in silo, we'll find that raw material cost is competitive. But if you say that at the end, at the casting realization stage, we find that because of this, all this filler agent or some kind of addition of that percentage will end up into that same or even higher cost. So those things are definitely can be taken care by the raw material supplier. So better yield, definitely, as I mentioned, that percentage of addition should be, if we are getting 1% desired strength of that resin, so that raw material supplier can take a challenge and target how we can reduce it to 0.9%, 0.8%, and so on, that year-on-year improvement. So this will definitely give the win-win benefit to that raw material as well as raw material supplier as well as manufacturer. Cost of inventory, definitely those things raw material supplier can ensure at his end, to ensure his the cost of raw material at his end as well as the cost of raw material at customer end. So we can have that economies batch of quantities and those number of inventory turns, minimal inventory levels. I have witnessed one foundry in Toyota where that raw material, maximum raw material inventory was 1.5 days, and there was a minimum raw material inventory was 2 hours. So that kind of inventories are been successful. It has been maintained in foundries in Toyota. So you can just understand that this inventory cost, if manufacturer is going to get the advantage on that inventory cost, he can reduce the cost of his component, and definitely we can sell more products globally, and we can become definitely vocal for local. That environmental impact, definitely that zero environmental footprint, zero hazardous product substance, zero waste, landfill, those issues supplier can ensure, where that it should not become a burden to the manufacturer how to dispose of those kind of cartons or plastic and wastages kind of things. Definitely they can work on that recyclable packaging, environmental friendly packaging, then recycling of even sand and kind of a thing. Why that should become a responsibility of only manufacturer? The recycling of the sand, for example, now it is a very serious issue it has become for every foundryman, how to dispose of the sand. Why can't the raw material can have a strategy to take back his all those disposal, and he can convert it and add value to his product, and it can become a win-win situation. So this kind of this from this foundry customer perspective, I thought I should share the inputs. And definitely that PPAP is a very powerful tool which every manufacturer and raw material supplier can use it. Now how much depth he can go, we can decide the level of the depth and criticality. Out of the 23 elements, they can select top 4, top 5, top 7, depending on the criticality of the raw material. So this is all from my side. So
Yeah, Amarjit,
so
thank you.
yeah. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thank you very much. And it was really inside of a material user. And you have given a lot of hints and a lot of ways how we can go ahead. Now, I would like to request Manish ji to take the dais and he can express his view on the subject matter.
Yeah, am I audible, Nagesh?
Clearly audible? Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you very much. First of all, congratulations to DFG Sandeep and the DFG group for taking this opportunity and making this unique efforts of doing such kind of panel discussions where people are in a position to express the thought and interact virtually and digitally. So thanks for that, and thanks for also opportunity given to me for sharing my views over here. I would like to start with congratulations to because Amarji has already done my 50% job. Because the way he expressed and the way he shared the details, I think I don't have anything now need to present. But yes, he is definitely in a position to do that because of the 27 years of the experience, especially done with the TPM level and the TPM view. He is in a position to do that. So hats off to him, and just wanted to start my presentation with one slide only. So am I able to?
Thank you, Manish.
Yeah, you can share your screen, Manish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
You can make presentation. Yes, now we are able to see it. Perfect.
Yes, so in only one slide, just trying to cover everything. But before going to this presentation, because Amarji and Mr. Amish has already presented a good statistics of the imported raw material and everything. So since I have been assigned with the task of sharing the details based on green sand and binders, so I'm going to focus on this particular chapter. So if you see in a short, the major green sand foundries, if you see, so 400 to 450 numbers are a specific number, though even in India we used to say 4,000, more than 4,000 foundries are there. But if you see specifically for the better green sand foundries, the numbers is lying only with 400 to 450. So if you see even those 400 foundries, the major foundries are producing 3.21 lakhs of casting per month, where they are consuming around 35,000 tons of bentonite plus 12,000 metric ton of the coal related products. And the calculation is based on the 10% of the bentonite for the liquid metal they are producing and 40% of the 40% of the bentonite for the coal part. So this is in short for the statistics which I have gathered based on our practical visits and the experience. If we wanted to focus basically on this chapter and this slide, so there is opportunities and the challenges for the localization. So in short, if you see for the opportunities column, I have specifically mentioned the opportunity in this challenging period is for the digitization, value and cost saving, not price. And my this value or not price is already explained by Mr. Amar Patil just in his all slides. And the gain own money. What is mean by this gain own money? So as you rightly said in the beginning of the this panel discussion, Nagesh, the foundry is having a potential of making huge losses. At the same time, it is having a potential of making better profits. So this is the own money from the raw material and the process perspective. Foundry is doing with their own processes, and that money has to take back. And this is possible only by doing the working on challenges. So what are those challenges? So the challenges I have tried to elaborate in this three particular column. Imply less is best principle. So what is this less is best principle? From 2007, we are always actually exploring this principle. So less is best principle is nothing. It is applying or optimizing each and every process for less is best. Whatever is you are going to use, try to optimize it. Say for an example of a resin, like Amarji is saying, most of the foundries earlier, they were using 1 to 1.2% resin. Now, after optimization, some of the foundries are in a position to limit it to 0.9% or 0.8%. Even though the global standards are 0.6 or 0.7, but at least with more and more optimization process, we are in a better position to reach to 0.6, 0.7 level. Say for an example of bentonite. The earlier bentonite usage in the average foundries was ranging for per batch 1% to 1.5%. It depends upon foundry practices as well as casting process. But I'm specifically saying, so those 1 to 1.5% band is possible to reduce to 0.8 to 1.2 or 0.8 to 1%. But a thorough scientific approach or a second dose by need usage ratio is needed, where you are in a position to only this imply less is best principle. Secondly, the supplier and foundry partnership. As Amarji is already saying, what are his expectations from suppliers? He is very correct in that, because supplier is not the only supplier. He is a partner in the making the castings, and by providing so much of raw material, quality raw material, consistency, and so much of the services. So foundry has to consider supplier as their partner, not only to make, not only to gain the money. So this is our this is my specific perspective. And when we are talking about localization, so if you see from the green sand perspective, the most of the elements which are already falling in this green sand perspective, like bentonite, like new sand or fresh sand, or the coal, these are fossil fuels and naturally occurring elements. So localization is already happened with this. Only few of the foundries are now started looking for the imported clay or imported sand because of the quality perspective. But even if foundries are specific and quality conscious for the usage of this clay, coal and sand, I am 100% sure and confident we are in a better position to manage this localization process by value engineering with supplier foundry partnership and digitization. So this is what I would like to conclude with my small thoughts, my own view, and my own presentation. Thank you, Nagesh.
Thank you, Manishji. Thank you for this. Now I would like to hand over it to Mr. Nitin. Nitinji is from the user side, and I request him to express his views on the subject matter. Over to you, Nitinji.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. Hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, that's good.
Manishji, can you stop your screen sharing?
That's what I'm doing. One moment, give me a moment.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. Once again, good evening, all. First of all, I'd like to thank Sandeep and Nageshji for inviting me to this panel discussion. I'm really privileged to be a part of this discussion today. So thank you once again. So going forward with our topic of localization, the challenges and the opportunities, what we basically have here actually. So I think most of our panelists, they have covered well in detail. Amishji has covered a lot. And also Amarji and Manish, both of them have really put a lot actually on this part. So I think most of you have eaten my part which I am supposed to basically express here. Anyway, I mean, that's really very nice. Coming to, I mean, one part, when being a end customer, end consumer, I mean, either from the foundry perspective, from the owner perspective point of view, we always, I mean, think where all we can best, I mean, save the cost. That is one of the most of the, I mean, the important aspect that every foundryman basically looks into this part. Now, when it comes to localization, I mean, what we basically call it as about the dream of our Prime Minister, Atmanirbhar Bharat. And yes, this is the right time that we need to really support all our, I mean, local suppliers, indigenization, and whatever we import to stop. I mean, I think he has covered in great detail. But what I want to say is that not just because only to stop something, but to I mean, judicially choose what to stop and what to take it at our end. One. Second thing is that support our suppliers. Our suppliers are quite indigenous suppliers. They are quite capable of producing good quality products, which I have seen over a period of time, and they are well, I mean, compatible with the imported products. So definitely there is a huge, I mean, opportunity for us to go for the localized products actually from our side. So when it comes to all this, so what as a foundryman, we I mean request everyone, in fact the other foundrymen also, to much move towards the localization, so that we can take such baby steps and ultimately support the dream of our Prime Minister to come up with a $5 trillion economy. That's what we're aiming to. These are something what we are going to basically start with and move the economy, wheel of economy. So this is one thing. Second important part, what I feel about localization is, I mean, just not about only import from other countries, but also from getting certain products which are nearby to our foundry. Something which I'm buying from, say, Calcutta, to me is something which is available nearby to Pune, Hubli, or Bangalore is also a local thing to us. So suppliers have taken enough effort for that part to, I mean, stage their godowns at various places, and they are making such things available. So this is something which is very plus to us. If we are getting something which is far away at the same cost or even lesser than that cost, definitely that is going to be a huge saving. There will be a huge amount of, I mean, saving towards the inventory, I mean, built up. That could be saved. Logistic cost can be saved, and very important part, even sometimes just because of something is not available locally, we buy from outside and then end up in I mean, building a piles of inventory that will basically take care of, I mean, it also consumes huge amount of space, and also in fact sometimes the FIFOs are not maintained, or sometimes the I mean the expiry dates also sometimes, I mean, go beyond that part, and then we end up with mess. So these are some of the definitely advantages what we basically can have when something is really available, very local. So I mean, for that, I mean, like, we definitely need to do some kind of I mean research for that part. Some like example of that part, like I mean, we used to get earlier the sand from Gudur, Andhra Pradesh. The suppliers to send us from that place, where he had a proper grading system, where he used to properly grade the sand and, I mean, maintain the right kind of a specification of the sand and then supply to us. But I mean, what we could really find is the logistic cost was sometimes quite higher than that of the sand also. So in that case, I mean, our cluster, some countrymen came together, developed some of the suppliers here, and we also understood that whether, I mean, we gave him the training for that part and made him understand whether we can come up with some kind of a grading system and all that part. So they built up with this kind of a things, and then we started taking the entire sand and the requirement from that particular supplier. So we literally changed what was really far away to a very nearby place actually. So this kind of exercise definitely can be taken. That also is applicable for sometimes the purchase of raw material in bulk through clusters, and then we take the benefit of, we take the cost benefit. So I mean, this is where something what we have really worked with our cluster and then helped actually on this particular part, and then we have really succeeded in these things. The one more important part, like what I basically think is about the service support which we basically get from the supplier. Something which is very far away. We are very sure. I mean, we don't get any kind of service support. They don't have any representation here in India or sometimes in nearby places or near to the foundry. It happened that once we imported some kind of an alloy from Italy, that was a particular special case. And once we opened the bag, we got to know that there is something different than the specification. Then there is a lot of argument, what we are sent, what we are given, who is going to prove actually on that part. So a lot of time basically gets wasted in talking on this part. And then we end up in some kind of a total loss actually in terms of money part also, as well as into inventory also. So in such cases, definitely preferring a local supplier is also one of the good decisions actually. So wherein sometimes whenever we come across any kind of a difficulty, now there were some bags we had taken some good load of bentonite from one of the suppliers. And initially, some bags were good, and then we used to continue to get a good, parameters actually, specifications, sand parameters in the right way. Over a period of time, we got to know there is some kind of a decrement. We did not get the right values actually. So immediately we called the supplier representative. Next day he was there at the row steps. We were able to find out. So there are two things. Sometimes what happens is that we mess up with the procedures to be followed when the supplier talks something about this to be mixed in this particular percentage, and we don't do that part, and ultimately end up in blaming the supplier. One. Second thing is that sometimes there's a problem with the supplier material also. So these issues can be definitely tackled when there is a local representation of the supplier near the foundry. So that basically helps us to take care on these aspects, and then able to choose the right kind of supplier for this one. There's one more important. When we all said this key, we can go local, we can cut our cost from the point of view of we save something actually. So from this point of view, what sometimes we feel is that the quality of the products what we take from the supply is also equally important. On one hand, there is a cost aspect. On the other hand, there is a quality. So we need to have a proper blend, judicially choose what is right. We have to understand the supplier's SLA. We also need to understand what level of rejections that we basically develop just because of using the low quality material. So we definitely need to understand what is the quality of the supplier. So I think Mr. Amarji has really explained in a very great detail actually on this part. So we need to definitely optimize all the raw materials properly. We need to validate, define the quality at our level, what is really required at our site, and then maintain that data and keep those validations and explain right about all our data to all our people. So whenever we change any kind of a material just because it is localized, or for sometimes some supplier comes and then influences you with their data, at that time we also change the raw material. So whenever we change the raw material, we should be able to validate this data and then compare with the benchmarking what we have done earlier. So this basically helps us to understand whether the supplier has really given us the right kind of a material, whether it is at par, or we have to, it is quite below that part, or something it is better than that part. So these are some of the things that we need to, basically understand when it comes to, quality, and we need to, make use of, the right kind of a supplier, and help this part in a hence foundryman basically to choose the right kind of a supplier. I think in short, I think I have covered about what I basically mean towards the localization. I think Nagesh, I think I'm done from my side.
Yeah, thank you, Nitinji. Thank you for expressing your views and giving insight about what the user should look at and how user should look at this term of localization of the raw material. Thank you for that. And now I would like to request Jaideep ji to share his view on the subject.
Okay.
Hello, over to Jaideep ji. Thank you.
Am I audible? Can you hear me?
You are clearly
Okay.
audible.
Are you able to see my screen?
Perfect. Yeah, we are able to see your screen.
Okay. So, and let me just put it in slideshow mode. Okay, so I'll try to, I think a lot has been said of very good value in terms of, a supplier perspective. So I'll try and summarize from a foundry raw material consumer. I'm a foundry, we are in Satara, roughly about 3,000 tons. So hopefully I can bring some unique perspective as to our concrete experience in terms of what we do, right? So first of all, let us understand why should I be interested in this whole topic of localization, right? So one is I get patriotic. I see Modi ji saying, Atmanirbhar bano. So there is this nationalistic fervor, patriotic fervor. And then all of a sudden I realize I'm in a very low cost industry, right? My margins sometimes are 1 rupee, sometimes 50 paise. So I have to remind myself as a foundry participant about Porter's 5 forces. Some of you may be aware of this framework, but it's an excellent framework that those of you who are not aware, I'll give you a quick glimpse. There are 5 forces always attacking you, right? You could have rivals, you have competition, right? We are not in a monopolistic, sorry, is my screen still being shared?
No, unfortunately it went off.
Okay, what happened? Let me share that again. Okay, you can see it again?
Now we can see it again.
Yeah. Okay, so I have competition and I'm in a hyper competitive industry. So I don't have very good strategic leverage there. There are constantly new entrants. There are people who can put 10, 20 crores and enter into your industry. So again, there I am not at a competitive advantage. There's lots of substitutes coming for foundry. Foundry materials can be replaced now with forgings. You can be replaced by now MIM. I was learning about this metal injection molded parts or even 3D mold. So there's lots of substitutes coming up. And then suppliers, fortunately suppliers don't exert as much pressure, but there's plenty of suppliers. So as such, none of these are strategic levers which allow me to use my patriotic desire that I'm going to go Atmanirbhar. I have to follow what my competition does. I have to do what local competitors do. And if the supplier says, "Bhaiya ye main nahi bana sakta hu, aapko India se nahi de sakta hu, aapko bahar se lena hai," say AkzoNobel, I'm not supposed to take names, sorry about that. Then I have to depend on Germany, right? I have to take the powder coating powders from outside. So finally, it comes down to what the customer says. The customer finally is the king as a business owner. The customer is what my nationalistic or my patriotic fervor is good enough while I'm watching TV. In the morning when I wake up, I have to remember I make 1 rupee per casting and I'm in a very low margin industry. So, okay, then why should I be interested in localizing? Because my customer says, through the pandemic, Hero and Bajaj and TVS, and we are in the two-wheeler industry. So they've been constantly hounding us saying, tell us what you import. Tell us, check with your tier 2, check with your tier 3. Are they importing something? Will we still be able to make motorcycles? Will you still be able to give cylinder blocks? So the customer push may come in terms of risk mitigation. Fortunately, as Amish ji and others presented, there's not a lot of my content coming from, so that is fortunate. But third on themselves saying, "Boss ho gaya abhi China ka deficit," as Amit ji pointed it. Can you hear me? I'm seeing you can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you. There was a bit disturbance, but now it's clear.
Sorry about that. So if the government, and it seems unlikely that the government will really poke around our supply chain because we don't seem to be in the top priority list. But if they come down to it, what could the government do? They can impose tariffs, they can impose duties, they can impose caps. Unfortunately, when a government tends to do that, it's economics 101. What happens is the customer ends up having to bear the cost. Some of the suppliers will benefit through this because of the tariffs, the local suppliers will start benefiting, right? The local suppliers are not going to say, "Hum Atmanirbhar banne ke liye hum sasta dete hain muta ko," right? they are going to take advantage and the prices will go higher. So who ends up paying the higher cost? The customer. Customer is a foundry like me. The foundry supplier will have to perhaps bear part of the cost, the OEMs, and of course the end user, right? So the costs of this kind of protectionism gets distributed. Having said that, one of the main motivations that we should still do it, put aside nationalism, bring about is the climate. When you source locally, you are helping the climate. And today, I don't know if some of you must have seen Modi ji's address. He talked about 3 P's: people, planet, and profit. So the third P, we can't forget that foundry is nevertheless a polluting industry, and we have to be mindful and we have to be conscious that we contribute a major section of the pollution. So if we localize, naturally you don't have shipments coming overseas, there's not a lot of oil burning through that whole process, so it helps the planet. So that would be my conscious reason to keep looking for local sources, excuse me. So moving on very quickly, and I realize we need to save time for discussion, so I'll make it very quick. I'll say a few of the anecdotal experiences we had. So we've been sourcing shots for many years, right? But the shots that we use, I'm talking about the steel shots we use in shot blasting. These tend to be of martensite, right? So martensite, as you're all foundrymen, so I don't need to tell you, martensite is brittle. So in the shot blasting process, I tend to lose, the productive, and it turns to sand, or it erodes. Whereas if you buy Benetic shots, you get higher productivity because the shots don't as such erode. Well, they erode, but they stay globular and they start shrinking, but they don't decimate. Okay. So I wasn't able to find very good sources. So this is where we couldn't find local substitutes and we had to import. Similarly, we are consumers of, we are a shell molding foundry, so we use a lot of resin, and we wanted to go from liquid resin to pelletized resin. This is, you can say, flake resin or pelletized resin. Unfortunately, not a lot of people have productionized it. We could find one producer of pelletized resin up in the north, but we can't depend on one producer. So at that point, we just had to give up and stick with liquid resin, which is a far more environmentally damaging as well as more expensive process. You could get a lot of cost savings through pelletized resin. So these are areas where we could, only if our foundry producers got more quality conscious and started producing better quality shots, better quality resin. My second experience, where we were not really, nationalistic about let's not source from, we have to save costs. So what do we currently import? We get really good quality MS scrap, particularly rotors and brake drums. You get excellent quality scraps from US, and the reason for that is they have excellent quality infrastructure for dismantling of cars. Now, fortunately, the government has been working actively, and I trust it has been working with Mahindra and some others, and lot of plants are coming up. So once the government starts a scrappage policy, we may be able to localize that, but currently we're importing because there's a cost advantage to, and as well as a quality advantage to importing rotors, brake drums, and other good quality CI scrap from, I wrote MS scrap, but I meant to say CI scrap. Also aluminum, you get great quality aluminum. As someone pointed out, they have excellent can collection, and these aluminum cans melt into really good quality, and Malaysia is a great source. Unfortunately, the duties were crammed in, and we were not able to import that from Malaysia. Sometimes you need much higher quality sands that you need that Goodlure or Allahabad just cannot provide. In that case, Dubai has an excellent source. I've known of foundries who have imported from France. And then if you have a good reclamation system, it stays in your system. So you can have really good benefits from importing sand and use. But then I point out, you can sort of localize by working on reclamation. So you import once, but then once it stays in your system, if you reclaim, then you're already minimizing the impact of exports. And then finally, there are places where the technology simply doesn't exist, right? Nanotechnology powders for powder coating process. There aren't many producers in India. Most of it, what I understand, comes from Germany and some other European countries. So I set up an alarm to remind me, and that ties well with all the points that I wanted to share. And I'll hand it back to Nagesh ji because I think this was supposed to be a discussion. So I'll stop right here, and hopefully I've provided a consumer perspective there.
Yeah, Jaideep ji, definitely you have given a really good view on consumer side, and that to your scale of operation. So now, to be honest with this, we ended up the opinion from the panel. Now, what I would like to request to participants is to ask the question. And Sandeep, you are there?
Yes.
Yeah. So what we will do is whoever raises the hand, we will unmute him.
Yes.
And
yes.
I request participants that when they are asking the question, they have to address to somebody specifically from the participant panel members. And if they cannot do it, they can just say, oh, it's open question, like that.
Meantime, also poll is also open. So kindly give your feedback regarding the webinar. Any questions?
So Jaideep ji, I think you can end up your screen.
Okay.
Yeah. So. So somebody has raised a hand?
No, yet not.
Sandeep ji, I think your third question was unintentional in this call.
Yeah. Yes, yes. It is unintentional. Yeah.
Okay. It's surprising. Nobody is raising the hand. Nobody is having question. You don't have question. Yeah, you don't have questions
properly.
No, you have you don't have questions in only in two cases. You understand everything or you understand nothing.
I can see Mr. Mehul Shah.
Yeah, Ramanan sir is raising his hand, and I will unmute Ramanan sir.
Yes, you can.
Sir, you went back on mute, sir.
I'm not seeing him.
Yeah, he is there. Sandeep.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Can we go to Mr. Mehul Shah? I think I see his hand.
Yeah. So, Mehul Shah, Ramanan sir, these are two hands which has been raised. Sandeep.
Yes.
Nagesh, you can ask the process to how to raise the hand. Maybe some participant may not be.
Yeah. They are raising
how to raise the hand in a Zoom.
Yeah, participants, you can raise the hand.
Yeah, Mehul Shah.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes,
we can
sir, yes,
hear
sir.
you loud and clear.
Okay, my question is for Mr. Baum. So where he said that for non-ferrous, specifically say aluminum, right? We have option of importing scrap. Okay, now see when we are talking about say self-reliant, okay, so where that purpose will be served, because major scrap is being imported from like other parts of the world. That was one question. And second question is when it's talking about this can. Okay, so what is the what yield we get when we melt this can? If he has got knowledge about that, or he has got data.
Mehul bhai, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Talking about the imports and duties and being self-reliant. See, my argument has been right from the beginning that there is no harm in importing as long as your value addition exceeds the import cost. See, you cannot get any scrap aluminum in India for 50 cents or 40 cents or like that. But if you are sourcing it and if you are getting a consistent quality of UBC or for that matter, any scrap in few cents per kg, then it's a gold mine for you. For any aluminum founder, it's a gold mine. Jaideep ji also mentioned about it. It's his experience about importing it from Malaysia. But again, any import is subject to government duties and restrictions. So if we keep that aside, as I said, market is volatile, it fluctuates daily. It's a demand supply gap. And if the supplier finds that there is a demand, next morning you will find that there is a 10-cent hike. And as such, you have to close your deal with a forecast in your mind. If you have order in your hand at a fixed cost, then and only then you can close your deal in advance. In such a case, if you are able to import UBC, then yes, there is technology available to melt UBC with a recovery rate of as good as 82 to 85%. And few furnaces, if you have vacuum assistance or inert gas assistance, then it can exceed 86, 87% as well. Rest of all is color and coating on the UBC. But anything more than 80% is good enough recovery for UBC.
Correct. Okay, and what kind of impurities we have in this particular UBC?
You get a slight tinge of manganese, because the pin which is having that can breaking lever pinned on the top, that pin is high manganese aluminum alloy.
Okay. 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 Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Raman, sir.
Yeah. I don't have any question as such, but I would like to add some points here. We need not be too nationalistic on this issue. Okay. Every foundry is a business. We run business for profit, and the profit makes the country richer. It's not that only the foundry owner is getting profit or something. So when we do the business, the raw materials are very important, and whosoever is able to supply a good raw material, we should take it, because that is how the process of the foundry is going to improve. So I'm not going to take a ore from India and make a bad casting and make a bad thing, the loss to the foundry. So I must go for a better ore, even if it is available in the foreign country. Okay, or ferrosilicon with barium. All these are available in plenty from China at a competent prices and good quality. Why not I take it? So I think we need not be too nationalistic to stop import from China. So probably we can attack, say, for so many other things, like we get crackers from China, we get toys from China. Let us stop those things. So I think we should go ahead with the profitability as a motive. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Excellent words of wisdom, Raman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Anybody? I think there is no more questions, I hope.
Okay. If not, I would like to ask the manufacturer and user, both of them, because I'm a casting buyer. Okay. So basically what happens is the raw material constitution is not that much important to the end buyer. What is more important is the fluctuations and how these fluctuations are transparent. See, I completely agree that there is price difference based on the scales. Like if a foundry who is producing 3,000 metric ton, definitely their buying terms for all the raw materials will be better than a foundry who is producing 300 metric ton. But still we have some basis or some price open systems like MMR, what we are preferably using. But what we can do to have it more like real time, or what value additions Indian foundry raw material manufacturers can do to those types of indices. Because yes, MMR is giving that most of the time it is based on the scrap and some of the raw materials, but not all. So how these fluctuations can be made more transparent? So what is the view on the manufacturer side? This is specifically to Amish and Manishji.
No, Nagesh, I didn't get you about about the fluctuation in prices or in quality.
Yeah, fluctuations in the prices, the base prices.
Yeah. So unfortunately, there is no, particularly for ferroalloys, MMR is the index.
Exactly.
I've heard that China is having a daily index, but most of the ferroalloys, apart from ferrosilicon or ferrochrome and ferromanganese, these are the bulk ferroalloys, there is no index available. So it is very difficult to link it with this kind of index. Only China is having, but unfortunately that is in Chinese. So I don't know how to, because for my purchase, I've tried to follow that, but it is not possible or to follow that Chinese index.
Okay.
And as far as resin and other materials are concerned, I'm not sure whether phenol is having an index or furan for fural alcohol is having some index. I'm not aware of that.
To be honest, you remember, if you remember last 1 year back, the prices of specifically the furan resin were shooting up like anything. And it was okay. I don't know whether it was really market condition or speculations, but it was very hard for anyone from purchasing side to say, okay, what exactly I should do, whether I should go for 30% price revision or whether I should go for 40% price revision. And you have to understand some of the times the buyer condition over here also. What happens is most of the time, if there are third party indexes, and it makes life very easy for the complete cycle. Like if you have an index based pig iron, then you need not to prove even if there is a fluctuation of 15-20%. So the price adjustments based on those types of reviews or those types of publications, which are third party and non-biased, makes life very easy for this cost management. Okay, there is in chat how to raise hand. Okay, it was based on money.
You go to participant. There is a symbol of chat.
Ashutosh Suru has raised his hand.
Yes.
Yes, Ashutosh.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, it was a good panel discussion. Sir had raised one point regarding this price revision or why these fluctuations happening. So few points I would like to highlight. If it is an imported material, like now when you are talking about resin, some base material is getting imported many times. So fluctuations happening because of various things. One is supply and availability demand. Second is the exchange rate. The fluctuations happening in exchange rate, dollar to dollar, or you can say euro, whatever exchange rate starts happening, that variations taking place. Then global petroleum prices, that is leading to a transportation when you are importing the material, because this sea cost, whatever is there, it is also again fluctuating. So there are not only a single parameter which gives these changes happening. Another thing, the basic raw material, whatever are getting used, application for other areas, if it is getting used for other applications, and how is the market demand for that, what is the pricing for that application also matters. If, for example, if crude price is dropping down, okay, globally, then naturally transportation costs should come down. But if you look at it in India, even though global prices are coming down, government had not decided to bring down the taxes. Okay, so this kind of global, what you can say, government regulations, government way of controlling also matters. So this fluctuation is generally happening because of various parameters. It's not only one particular area. So supplier point of view, it will vary depending upon what kind of material they are buying and location where from they are buying. Are you getting my point?
Yeah, we get it. The supply chain is quite deep, and to understand
Yes.
where
Yeah.
exactly import content
Yeah.
is coming from, it's going to be very
Correct.
hard. So
Yeah. So it is superficially, it's very difficult to decide why it is going up and why it is going down. It is just like, we many times we see market share going up, suddenly market share dropping down. And when we try to understand why it had gone up, something somewhere happened, and then suddenly that is impacting Indian market share. It is like that only. Many materials which we are getting, it is a combination of 5 forces and various what we are talking about, whatever has been shared so far. This is also applicable for different levels. And this supply chain is end to end. I don't know, we are supplier to foundry. There is someone supplier to us and somebody is supplying to him. So that chain is very long, and everywhere, everyone has to make a profit to be continue his business, to be in business. So is that dynamic kind of thing is very difficult to analyze in one shot.
I just want to add.
Nagesh.
Yeah, can I just add a point to what Mr. Sumit just said?
Yeah, definitely.
So, there's a strong trend towards deglobalization. Even before the pandemic, the trade wars that the President Trump triggered with China slowly led to, again in Europe and all of that. And then the pandemic has sort of set the alarms on everyone's radars that what if my supply chain suddenly gets stopped? So the Economist magazine is calling this trend globalization. So, every day we are, again, I had mentioned this when I spoke about, customers want to know what are my dependencies and they want to slowly reduce. But I think, the word globalization is apt going to do this, but slowly the globalization will reduce, the pace at it was progressing will slow down. And, in this, we will have to get more and more conscious as to where is my content actually getting manufactured. As a consumer, I don't pay that much attention. My purchase team gets the sign off from me. They don't probably bother to ask, neither do I ask. But we will slowly have to ask, because if another pandemic hits, I need to know what will stop, and I need to transparently tell my customers where it will stop from. Yeah. I just want to make one other point. I noticed that the count of participants has increased since we started. And I want to point out to these participants who started late that some excellent presentations were made by Amish ji. Bam Saab had some excellent points on non-ferrous metals, Patrikar Saab and Patil Saab and others. So I would urge you to go back and listen to the recordings if you have come in late into this panel discussion. Thank you.
Yes, Jaydeep, we are going to put it on the YouTube channel. So everybody who has joined late or who has not able to join it, they can also able to go and take advantage of this webinar. Yes, Nagesh.
I think we can conclude this.
Yes.
Yeah, Manish.
Any questions?
Nagesh, before conclude, I just wanted to share one view, because everybody in every discussion and most of the webinars or foundry seminars, we used to see that foundries are struggling with the questions and they always have a conflicts what they want. So even with the trials which we have done globally or over pan-India, I would like to urge and request the foundrymen, specifically through this forum, we should have the clear objective what we want. Suppose in case of green sand, when we are introducing any supplier or any new product, so we should have a clear bifurcation and a clear demand or objective decided for that particular supplier. Say for an example, Mr. Nitin Landge was telling just example of having a bentonite quality change. So when they are asking for a bentonite quality change, they should have a clarity in a mind whether I am going for consumption reduction, whether I am going for some property enhancement like WTS or GCS, or something which is different than these things. So when you have a clarity of the objective, from the supplier or from the raw material, then you are in a position to go with that particular specific supplier or the product. And even if you notice, when Amarji was expressing everything in his presentation, he was particular about cost. He was not saying anywhere a price. So this is the differentiation. You also understand, as you are also buying castings, price and cost. These are two 360-degree change words. So when you are talking about cost, it's a different, and when you are talking about price, it's a different. So just wanted to share these things. You should have a clarity what exactly a foundryman or a foundry wants from that product or a supplier.
Okay, so I think we do not have any more questions or participants.
No questions.
There are no message. Yeah, there is one message from Raman sir. Thank you, sir. So I thank everybody, specifically to all the panel members. I thank them personally for giving their valuable time and valuable insight based on their rich experience. They have shared their views on this topic. And I also thank every participant to spare his time for these discussions. And we are looking forward for some more interesting topics in future. So thank you and stay safe and good evening to everyone. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Sandeep.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.